Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Linking herself through a second channel that she created, she filtered through all of the useless information. Found it, she thought with a smile. In the royal family, excluding Lyrica, there are 4 princes and 2 princesses. The princes are gunning for the throne while the princesses are trying to get help from outside powers. There had been more princes in the past, but they had been eliminated one after the other, leaving them with the current lineup. Blythe was the current 3rd prince, and his power was in the middle. According to what she could find, it was rumored that the highest level person in his faction was a powerhouse nearing the stage of Tier 5. However, that was just a rumor. The 1st prince, Nelder Wallenstein, has the most power among all the princes. He's being openly supported by the Rising Sun faction along with several high-level powerhouses near the peak of Tier 4. Following behind the 1st prince was the 2nd prince, Alasher. While he doesn't have as many high-level powerhouses like Nelder, Alasher has the backup of several high-tier factions along with the top-tier faction, God's Pantheon, who is a direct contender against the Rising Sun faction. The 4th prince, Lefer Wallenstein, was definitely the weakest out of them all since he has no support whatsoever. However, he was the favorite candidate of the citizens since he focuses on the people rather than the power. Publicly stating that he doesn't need to be king to help the people, he would rather not fight against his brothers despite not being born from the same mother. There are several nobles who wish that Lefer would take up the role as king, but could only watch in pity. As for the princesses, they were receiving training by the church so that they could take up the role of being the next saintess. Regardless of who takes the throne, they will support them after they ascend. With this being the case, the most dangerous is definitely the 1st and 2nd brother. Blythe can be set aside for now since his support is still lacking. There's also the variable called the elders. For the ascension to have been delayed for so long, they must hold a considerable amount of power as well. They'll be the biggest obstacle since there is no information regarding their levels or support. Only names. Shiro frowned. There are a total of 5 elders of unknown strengths and have not expressed which side they're on. They were currently taking the passive approach of just watching what was happening. Once we're in the Muriel, we will definitely have run-ins with 2 top-tier factions. Main objective is to keep Lyrica safe and try to separate her from the royal family if we could. Not only that, but we'll also need to make sure that we don't piss off anyone from the top-tier factions. That being said, we also need to take the initiative. Leaning back slightly, Shiro frowned and thought deeply about what she can and can't do in Muriel. She had to find the right balance so that they could get the best outcome. If I use the life fire, or rather, the essence flame, I may be able to get an upper ground in terms of negotiation. But as Lyrica has stated before, I need to be careful or else I'll make the entire elven race my enemy. Massaging her eyes, she decided to take a bath now. Girls, let's go have a bath now. Shiro called out. I'm ready. Lyrica stopped her practice instantly. Smiling wearily, Shiro looked towards the other girls and saw that they were ready as well. Walking over to the wall-mounted tablet, Shiro checked where the bathroom was and found it rather quickly. The first thing she did when she entered the bathroom was to make sure that they weren't being monitored at all. Once she was sure that they were in total privacy, she sighed in relief and added a few formations to keep things extra safe. Setting up the bath, Shiro stretched her body and undressed. While this was happening, Lyrica stood in a trance and even needed Madison to knock on her head in order to snap her out of it. Nimue, how does it work exactly? Shiro asked while ignoring the girls behind her. Don't worry about it, my queen. You just need to take a bath as usual, and I'll do the rest. Nimue replied almost immediately. All right. Dipping her foot in the bath, she saw that a layer of fog seemed to form over the top and realized that it was condensed mana. Huh. Sighing out in relief, Shiro relaxed her body. While she was relaxing, Lyrica cursed the fact that there was now a layer of fog so that she couldn't see anything. ####. For the next few days, Shiro focused on doing research along with helping the girls train. She made sure that she researched the prince's skill sets and any martial arts so that she could be ready for when they fight. Not only that, she also made sure to check on how much manpower each faction had placed on Muriel. Since Japan was neighbors with the Elven continent, the Rising Sun had placed quite a lot of importance on the country. God's Pantheon, however, only assigned a few branch masters to support the prince. It didn't matter to them if the country was theirs or not, since they were located quite far from the country. But if the Rising Sun faction thought that they were going to give a country without a fight, they were dead wrong. In addition to this, Shiro found out about the average level in the country. Most of the adventurers were nearing level 80 to 100, while the higher-ups were 100 plus. The first Prince Nelder was a level 110 Ascended Sword Emperor that excelled in attack power but lacked spells. Second Prince Alasher was a level 100 Mystic Warlock. Having a class that focused on spell dominance, his physical prowess was rather weak. But with his myriad of spells and long-ranged attacks that would lock onto you, it was a difficult task to get close. She also did some research about Blythe's Domain Master class. It was one that she had some idea of, but wasn't too sure about the details. It turns out that the class focused on status effects along with area dominance. His spells could decrease your stats and increase his own. But that wasn't it. He could also put a silencing domain where spells would be negated. This was extremely troubling for the second prince, but was nothing in front of the first prince. However, the Domain Master was similar to the Snowmancer in terms of diversity. That was because he also had a counter for the first prince. With the third prince being a counter for both princes, once he decides to work with either one of them, the balance would be tipped, and it would become a full-on slaughter. The only reason as to why the two princes haven't killed the third prince to get rid of this problem was because of the fact that the fourth prince may intervene and stop the fight. Once that happened, the third prince could easily find the time to ambush them. With the balance being so delicate, any moves could possibly trigger a domino effect. But despite finding out quite a bit regarding the country's state of power and influences inside the country, Shiro couldn't find anything to do with Lyrica being called back. Even with her nanobots constantly eavesdropping on Blythe and his four guards, she hadn't heard anything useful regarding this. The lack of information from the web could be explained as the royal family not wanting to let this leak, but the fact that Bultai had said nothing about this was strange. Of course, it could just be that he didn't need to say anything about it. If that was the case, then she was just unlucky. But if it wasn't, it meant that the princes might not know why Lyrica was needed back at the royal family. With so many unknown variables spread out like this, she needed to make sure that every move was one that was done after some consideration. She could try making a plan right now, but it may be rendered useless once she gets new information. The best thing that Shiro could do was to just sit tight and adapt to the situation. Asterisk knock knock knock. Hearing a knock, Shiro walked over to the door and opened it. "We've arrived at the elven capital, Miriel," Blythe said with a smile. Walking out of the room, Shiro looked down from the dragon's back and was rather impressed by what she saw. Seeing the place in real life gave off a better feeling than seeing a picture after all. Compared to the buildings that she saw in the ruined continent/old Earth, there was definitely a more medieval feel to the architecture style. Instead of clearing the land up for space, they opted to adapt to the landscape and use it to their advantage. All arcs and spires could be seen all over the place as there were buildings that were built alongside waterfalls. Columns of mana prevented the waterfall to intrude into the buildings, allowing the residents to have a clear view. Airships and mounts flew in designated lanes, while on land was mostly filled with people walking around. After all, some could jog faster than cars if they wished to get to their location faster. From what she could see, the city was split into layers. On the outer layer, the most basic facilities could be seen. There was nothing fancy, but nothing poor. As one progressed through the layers and towards the center, the facilities would become fancy along with the decoration. Buildings were painted with a mixture of white, cream, and gold, which gave off a refined feeling. In addition to this, tall trees could be seen as it slowly transitioned to that of a miniature forest of sorts. With a mixture of buildings that resided on the ground floor and on the trees, bridges were built to connect them to each other. At the center of the city was a giant tree that was surrounded by tall infrastructure. Towers, bridges, and arcs surrounded the tree like a cage, as Shiro guessed that this was the royal castle. Looking up at the tree, she could see a faint dome of mana spreading out and over the entire city. That is probably a barrier to prevent any large-scale destruction spells. But what's powering the huge thing? Back in Aria, we had condensed mana battery farms to power barriers. But such technology is clearly out of reach for the current generation, Shiro thought in wonder. During the trip, She had researched on the technological aspect of the current world and realized that it was still in a transitioning stage of sorts. This was when they were still developing mana-infused tech. While computers were upgraded, they were still limited by weapons and vehicles, hence why most of the people would use swords and mounts. This was because the technique to imbue weapons with mana is hard to apply on items that have a lot of components. Not only do they need to make sure that the balance was correct, they also had to embed mana into each compartment individually. But if they were to do that, there will be no synergy in the parts, resulting in a defective weapon. Hence why swords were the most common weapon. Made from a single piece of metal, the creator would only need to embed it once to get the best results. This was the limiting factor for weapons. But for vehicles, it was slightly different. Airships could be created easily since it was just a matter of using formations and mana crystals correctly. But for vehicles like cars or planes, such tasks were too difficult for the current world's technology to create. Not to mention, airships were privileged items, but were inferior to mounts in terms of speed. The only reason one would use airships would be to show off and to travel across the world. That was because mounts had limited stamina, so they couldn't travel for a very long period of time. An airship was entirely powered by mana and could run for a long time. Mounts like dragons were an exception since their mana efficiency for flight was amazing. Normal mounts couldn't even compare. But if one was to take out exceptional mounts, once normal adventurers reached a destination, they would mark it using the teleport shrine and teleport when they wish. Previously, she hadn't found the teleport shrine in the other cities she's been to, so she wondered if it was limited to New York. Thankfully, she was able to spot one at the middle layer of this city. With this, I should be able to travel between continents with ease. But I would have thought that there would be some near Kairosa or Varisha though. Could it be different in this world? She wondered to herself. In Arya, these kinds of shrines could be found everywhere. They were so common to the point that the scientists in the world were able to conduct research on it. Unfortunately, they were still amidst research at the time of her death. But since she had only found two, she couldn't use it as a base to determine the situation of the teleport shrines. They were naturally erected buildings to begin with. People had no control over where they would appear. While the party admired the view, Shiro saw melancholy and nostalgia in Lyrica's gaze. She lost her parents and fled this country after all. It wasn't surprising to Shiro that Lyrica would feel such feelings. Walking over to her, she patted her head softly. Why did you pat my head? Lyrica asked while trying to hide the blush that was slowly emerging on her face. Don't worry, everything is going to be okay. Shiro smiled. Understanding that Shiro noticed her feelings, Lyrica nodded her head and felt reassured. With a person like Shiro doing their best to help you, one couldn't help but feel like they could take on anything in the world. Controlling the dragon to fly towards the castle, Blythe had Morthal send a message to the guards about their return. As they approached the landing area, Shiro spotted several dignified men along with some maids. We welcome your highness's return, they called out when the dragon landed. Quickly walking over with some wristbands, the maids offered one to each of them except for Lyrica. The situation is a little problematic, so this will hide your true appearances from unveiling arrays we have scattered throughout the castle. Blythe informed. He knew that this wouldn't hide their stats, but said nothing. If Shiro hadn't warned the party beforehand about being careful around all the princes, they would have thought that he was being genuine. Taking the wristbands, they changed their appearances slightly so that they wouldn't be recognized. As for Shiro, she changed her appearance back to what she looked like when she was in her old body. She had long black hair, a C-cup breast, and average height. Her face wasn't as beautiful as it was now, but was still pleasing to the eye. Well, this should do, right? Shiro smiled. Her aura had completely changed as from the slightly mellowed-out aura that she had normally to one that had confidence. It was similar to what a leader would have since they were at the top of the food chain. Even Blythe had to admit that he was suppressed by her aura. Morthal frowned since this only fueled his suspicions. But since the prince forbids him from making a move, he could only watch from the sidelines. Yes, that's fine. Blythe nodded after a short pause. If he were to describe the previous her like a flower in the process of blooming, then the current her would be a rose at the peak of its life, full of vitality and beauty. Despite not having the same beauty, her natural disposition made her more desirable. which only caused him to wonder about her identity. But now wasn't the time. The elders had surely received word about their arrival, so he should bring Lyrica to them as he was instructed. Come, the elders have been waiting for a long time, he said, and led the party through the castle. As they arrived before the council room where they would meet the elders, Blythe couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Seeing his reaction, Shiro realized that the elders must not have told him anything or else he wouldn't be this afraid of their response. Interesting. Asterisk knock knock knock. Knocking on the door, Blythe waited patiently for their response. You may enter and greet the council. An aged voice called out. Taking a deep breath, Blythe gestured for the escorts and Morty to wait outside and pushed open the door. Looking at the 5 elders seated on tall platforms, Blythe bowed. This one greets the 5 elders. He said, You may rise. Leave the room, for we shall talk with Lyrica Wallenstein, daughter of Edvamar Wallenstein and Talia Feha. Understood. Blythe nodded his head and left the room. With just the 5 elders and the party in the room, Shiro noticed the fact that the atmosphere seemed to become tense. Lyrica, after all these years, how do you address us? One of the elderly women asked with a serious face. This young one greets esteemed elders. Lyrica kneeled. Amen. Now, do you know why we have called you back to the capital despite you leaving for so many years? Hearing the elder's question, Lyrica furrowed her brows. This one does not know? I hope that the elders can educate me on the matter. Lyrica replied respectfully. We've called you back here because your father's legacy has been discovered by your brothers. My father's legacy? Lyrica asked in confusion. Indeed. The elders nodded. Why must you call me back now? Is it because the legacy's been discovered and you want me to claim it for you? Lyrica asked with a sigh. From what Shiro had told her, she knew that she needed to be careful with trusting the words of the elders. You're wrong. Hearing their response, Lyrica looked up in surprise. She could see the sadness in their gaze while looking at her. Back then, your father had asked us to keep you away from the city should he fall into an accident and not be able to help you. He wanted you to live a peaceful life away from battles. This was why we had tried our best in making sure that your brothers wouldn't attack you since you were your father's favorite child. One of them sighed and tilted her head back. Reminiscing about their deceased king, she couldn't help but feel emotional. But this changed when they discovered the legacy. Knowing that you had the biggest chance to unlock the legacy, Nelder and Alasher have turned their focus on you. If we didn't send Blythe to get you soon, you would have been kidnapped by them without anyone knowing. Thankfully, Blythe's support is still lacking right now, so we can suppress him. Another added on and massaged his eyes tiredly. But weren't you displeased with my father? Lyrica asked in confusion. Seeing the elders' expressions, she realized that they were not who she thought they were. Child, we're not that petty. While we were indeed annoyed by his actions, we respected his choice. The elven race's survival had been placed on his shoulders. What is a little freedom compared to the survival of a race? For him to have offered so much of himself for the elven race, allowing him to be with your mother was the least that we could do. Hearing their response, Lyrica looked towards Shiro for help. She didn't know if she should trust their words. Don't worry, Lyrica, they're speaking the truth. Shiro nodded her head. She wasn't surprised that Lyrica was confused since she was as well. But the fact that they were indeed telling the truth couldn't be denied. Their speech, gestures, and subconscious movements couldn't be faked. But if that's the case, why are you letting my brothers kill each other? Isn't this just weakening the elven race even more? Lyrica asked. Heis, you see, after your father and mother died, we had to make some compromises or else everything would have been over. Without a stronger leader that could dissuade people from making a move against us, our race would have been enslaved. Therefore, the best option at that moment was to allow the princes to fight each other. They would gather supporters and stop the enemy from attacking easily, or else they'll offend the large factions. This was the only compromise that we found at the time. With the time that this conflict bought, we've tried to find a suitable king, but none of your brothers fit the role. Even your fourth brother, he cares for the people, but he had no ambition, nor did he have the steeled heart of a king. Having him ascend the throne would only send this race into a slow but inevitable dead end. Then how does getting me to return changes the situation? I don't want to be a ruler either. Lyrica frowned. You don't need to be the ruler. I just hope that you can support your fourth brother to survive this conflict. Even though your fourth brother would send this race into a slow, destructive path, we can only hope that he can marry and give birth to worthy descendants in the time that we're still alive so that we can train them when they're young. One of the elders shook his head. And I suppose that having Lyrica claim her father's legacy will solidify Lyrica's position, am I right? Shiro asked. Seeing her cut in, the elders found it a little rude but decided to let it pass for now. Indeed. They nodded. I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's foolish. Shiro shook her head. Her response had caused the party to widen their eyes in shock. Wasn't it you who told us not to piss them off? They protested in their minds. Asterisk, boom. A furious aura crashed down into the room as the elders didn't look too happy. I don't care if you're Lyrica's friend, but are you challenging us? Yes, I am. Shiro grinned as her own bloodlust countered their aura. Feeling her bloodlust, they realized that Shiro was no ordinary C-classed adventurer. Do you not see the foolishness in your plan? Using the fourth prince as a vessel to create a more suitable heir. Was this not the reason for this situation to begin with? Lyrica's father was used as a political tool to create alliances and heirs. But because of his actions to focus on his true love, he had offended lots of people. If you hadn't forced him to do that, things would not have escalated to this point. Shiro rebutted. By doing the same for the fourth prince, you're only creating the foundations to your own demise. The situation is already tense. If you put so much focus on the fourth prince, which many nobility and factions think has the least chance of succeeding, you're effectively adding fuel to the already raging fire. This would only prompt the factions and nobles to eliminate you first since you're their biggest blockade. Shiro narrowed her eyes. Once that happens, even if you had the best plan in the world, it wouldn't work. Hearing her reasoning, the elders paused as realization struck them. They had focused on running away and preserving the race and couldn't see the obvious flaw. However, think of this as an alternative. Shiro grinned. Since she knew the elders' goal and reasoning, she could finally take the initiative. If she was to present her solution, not only would it clear Lyrica of her responsibilities as a potential queen, it would also hopefully resolve the elves' worry about enslavement. Of course, she wasn't going to put all of her cards on the table. What she was going to show them was just the solution she could get with minimal amounts of effort. What you want to do is support the third prince on the outside. Once that happens, both the first and second prince will be on guard since his class is the most troublesome. This will prompt them to team up and defeat the third prince. However, in doing so, it will also reveal their trump cards to the factions. Should you sneak some extra manpower to increase their power and proof of ambition, the factions would realize how much of a problem the princes are. But at that point, they've already helped them a little too much. This will prompt them to work together and split their profits of this country once that happens. Isn't that just speeding our destruction? The elders narrowed their eyes. On the surface, yes. But think about this. Where have they directed their focus? Shiro smiled. The first and second prince. Bingo. Shiro grinned. But that isn't all. While they're focused on the first and second prince, they're also focused on each other. The big factions don't want one side to be stronger than the other, so they'll limit the amount of manpower they provide in hopes of reaping rewards with the least amount of casualties. They'll determine which prince is the weakest out of the two and provide them with help, overpowering the strongest contender. Once that happens, they can then focus on weakening the chosen prince, while also keeping checks on each other. And while all of this is happening, the fourth prince is free to be trained. You can also increase his influence among the citizens to ensure his safety. Shiro smiled. What do you mean by that? The elders frowned. The power of the populace is bigger than you think. Once he shows his support for the people, he'll become a target of reverence and give him a place in the hearts of the people. Once that happens, he'll become an integral part of this country to the point that the factions can't easily remove him, or else everything they've worked towards will be foiled. Because once he dies, the people will revolt. This means the collapse of the system in this country and a decrease in its value and manpower. Once that happens, any faction that wants to monopolize this place will have to expend a lot of power to keep it safe. But with their focus on the front lines, they cannot spare too many people, so this place will become more trouble than it was worth. How can you guarantee that the people will revolt? They've already lost a symbol of peace and protection. If they lose another one, They'll have to be idiots to not realize the looming threat of having other factions influencing in their country. And it all boils down to one key word: pride. Shiro narrowed her eyes as her face looked extremely devious at this moment in time. Pride. Yes, pride. If they've been targeted time and time again, do you think they'll take it lying down? The pride of being an elf and a being of basic rights will be violated should they do nothing about his death. If the factions are smart, they'll realize the problem of having someone like the fourth prince too late. Troubled times give birth to heroes. Once the elven race bands together to face the enemy that wanted to strip them of their rights, can the factions and government stay there and do nothing? Unless they wanted the entire world to be at conflict and give the demons a chance of killing everyone, they'll pacify the situation and ensure the elven race's survival. The consequences of ignoring this or terminating the elven race are bigger than you think. Fear will be planted in everyone's hearts and doubt will spread. Shiro chuckled. This was the easiest solution that she had thought up of. While parts may be subjected to adjustment depending on the situation, it was one of the best chances they had at getting what they wanted. This could work. The elder muttered in surprise since she had brought forth several logical explanations. Hearts of the people, the greed of the factions, and the threat of the demons on the front lines. We'll consider this over the next few days. In the meantime, you can experience top-tier treatment from us. The elder nodded and gestured for them to leave. Okay, just make sure that you don't support the fourth prince for now, Shiro reminded. Leaving the council room, Shiro saw a few maids waiting outside. Blythe was nowhere to be seen as Shiro guessed that he had been sent away. Miss Shiro, would you please follow us and we'll show you to your rooms? The elven maid bowed respectfully. Thank you. When they arrived at the room, Shiro made sure to set up some formations so that they couldn't be spied on. So what did you want to ask of me? Shiro smiled and sat down on a chair. Removing her disguise, she returned to her usual look. Didn't you say that you couldn't make any plans? What was that about? Madison asked since she remembered about Shiro talking about how she couldn't make any concrete plans until she had more information. I never said I couldn't make plans. Only I needed more details to make a feasible plan. Shiro replied nonchalantly. Then, does that mean you came up with all of that within the time you were in the elder's room? Chinyu widened his eyes in shock. Yup. The party looked at Shiro as if she was an absolute monster. Correction. Chinyu looked at Shiro as if she was a monster, while the other party members could only leave their jaws hanging in shock. How? Madison cried out. There was no way that Shiro could have planned all of that with the small amount of time they had in the room. Easy. To make this plan, I need a few key points. The goal of the elders along with the state of the elven race. Once I have both of these, I'll be able to make a plan. Shiro raised 2 fingers and crossed her legs. The goal was safety of the race with a powerful shield, and the most powerful shield as of this moment is obviously the world government. The state of the elven race was a war between the princes. With these 2 points, I then thought of hurdles that I needed to clear. Number 1, the factions. Number 2, the princes. Number 3, the foreseeable future, and number 4, the fact that Lyrica doesn't want to be queen. She smiled. Since these were the main hurdles, I devised a way of clearing the hurdles so that we can achieve our final goal. Naturally, this was thought up on the spot, so there may be some loopholes that may appear later. But we can fix that by adapting to the situation. Remind me to never play chess with you. Chinyu sighed. While she made it sound easy, one would find it hard to present the plan to the elders. By showing her own force which could contend with the elders, Shiro was able to level the playing ground and get them to talk with her. With the amount of pressure that the elders were outputting, normal adventurers would find it amazing if they could think of a plan rather than how to survive. You overestimate me. While I did sound confident, there are unchangeable variables that I didn't mention earlier. Shiro chuckled. What do you mean? Lyrica's influence. She turned to Lyrica. My influence? Yes. Even if they place their focus on the first and second prince, the factions will keep a tab on you since you have the highest chance of inheriting your father's legacy. Shiro shook her head. There were few ways that she could change this, but it would risk suspicion and prompt the factions to make a move early. That was the situation that she hoped to ignore since the other pieces weren't in place yet. But don't worry about it too much. I'll do the hard stuff now since you can help me at a later date. Shiro smiled. Thank you. Lyrica felt a little emotional since Shiro was trying her best to help her out of this situation. No need for thanks. In the meantime, I want to go link up to the teleport shrine so that we can travel freely between New York and Muriel. Shiro suggested. Meanwhile, so my sister has returned. Just when we discovered father's legacy as well. A voice muttered in displeasure. Do you think it's the elders? Another voice asked. Of course it is. Who else would it be? The first voice retorted. The owner of the voice was the first Prince Nelder. His hair was blonde while his eyes were sapphire blue. Sporting a thin yet powerful physique, his demeanor lived up to his class of ascended sword emperor. As for the second voice, it belonged to an emissary of the Rising Sun faction. Should I take care of her then? Unlike your brothers, she doesn't have any support. The emissary smiled. No, not yet. I want to see what the elders are planning first. If anything, we can lure my second brother to kill her and give the elders a reason to side with me. Nelder replied. If you say so. The emissary shrugged. He was just here to support the prince and not tell him what to do. After all, the faction wanted to see what he could do. The same situation happened with the second prince as he opted to hang back and see what happens for now. Any rash movements could spark the start of the war after all. ####. Arriving at the teleport shrine, Shiro placed her hand on the center platform and registered her mana. I should be able to travel to New York right now if I wanted. She muttered with a smile. Turning to the other party members, she decided that they needed some more levels while they waited for the elder's response. You lot go to a dungeon for now. Prioritize on leveling up Sylvia since her support will help a lot in the upcoming fights. Lysandra, you and Ian party up with Sylvia to level her up. Lyrica, Madison, and Shunyu, you three party up and learn how to kill things above your level without Sylvia's help. Shiro instructed. She didn't go since she wanted to search for some information in the library. But it didn't matter too much since the EXP that Lysandra earns is funneled to her due to Lysandra's class. This meant that she could level up while she was in the library. Understood. The party nodded since they knew that their best option was to follow Shiro's instruction for now. Watching the party leave for the dungeons, Shiro pulled out her phone and searched for where the royal library was. She wanted to uncover some information regarding Kuromi if she could. That way, she could at least guess who her enemies were. Not only that, she may even find out about the relation between Kuromi and Yuki. I might even be able to find out about her situation right now since in the letter, she said that it was problematic for her to send the letter. Shiro thought to herself while making her way to the library. Arriving at the library, Shiro wasn't surprised about how there were little to no books. Since the internet was able to house a lot more information than books ever could, hardly anyone had chosen to go paperback. The only reason that the library was still around was because they acted like a giant archive for information. Of course, that wasn't to say that there were no books at all. Only important information that people didn't want to be hacked would be printed on books. These included martial arts, blueprints, or medical formulas. Shiro knew that there were probably some martial arts in the royal library, so she chose that as her next target. After all, she wanted to improve her martial arts since that was a weak point in her past life. She had relied on her nanomancy too much. Making her way to one of the consoles, she pretended to search for a book while in actuality, she was making a solo channel for herself so that she could search for information without anyone finding out. Using the keyword Kuromi, Shiro filtered out all of the files that might have nothing to do with her. She couldn't look at each of them one by one after all. This was the fastest way. But even after filtering out the files that didn't have the word Kuromi, there was still a mountain of files for her to go through. This might take all day. She sighed. Looking at the first few posts, Shiro found nothing to do with her. All mentions of Kuromi were all different people that had no resemblance towards her. Continuing her search, she found herself in a repetitive cycle of reading the article and throwing it aside. Even after 2 hours of searching, she hadn't found anything. URG. I might get myself a drink or something while I search. She muttered. Decided to glance at one last article before she leaves for some food, Shiro picked a random file near the end of the pile. Looking at the title, she paused in surprise. Goddess Kuromi leaves a massacre with every step. Ohaya. Raising an eyebrow, she decided to read on. The first image that she saw was a more mature version of her current body. With black hair, of course. Her face was also a little different, but that could be attributed to class ups and maturity. Dressed in a mage's robe, Kuromi had a devious grin on her face, while there were collapsed adventurers around her. Seeing Kuromi's figure, Shiro focused on the average bosom and smiled. It wasn't huge, but wasn't small either. Just what she wanted. I still have hope, Shiro thought to herself with a smile. Reading the article, she managed to find some information about the old owner of her body. Using this as a base, she had managed to filter out other articles that had similar information. Hell, she even found a fan site that documented her actions, helping her to discover more about herself. Her full name was Asakura Kuromi, the eldest daughter of the Asakura clan. The clan was full of warriors that specialized in using their body and katana. Her father, Asakura Koji, is the clan leader and is currently a level 400+ Blood Moon Emperor. He plays a large part in helping out in the front lines and has even elevated the Asakura's family name to greater heights. Her mother, Asakura Mio, is known for her beauty and elegant swordplay. There were few enemies that could even react to her attacks since her class focused on speed. Unfortunately, there were very few records about her or her family. No one knew of her before Koji introduced her to the world as his wife. The only thing that people knew was her class and level. Level 400+ Mystic Reaper. With the both of them at level 400+ and reaching the peak of Tier 5, there were almost no one that could stand against them. And yet, Kuromi was still killed after she offended someone. To make matters worse, her enemy was actually able to block all news about her death since the last record she found of herself was when she left the house after getting into an argument with the Asakura family regarding how there should be more diversity with classes. To think that they could trick two Tier 5 beings. Kuromi's enemy may be stronger than I thought. Shiro frowned. If they're fearless towards her parents, the highest possibility was that the enemy was at a higher level than them. Hell, he might even be a Tier 6 for all Shiro knows. But the possibility of the offender being someone that was ballsy was also an option. Shaking her head at the growing danger of her enemy, she decided to reach Tier 4 first. Once she does, she'll be able to contract Yuki and find out more. Even if she doesn't want to continue Kuromi's life as a human, the fact that Kuromi's enemies were her enemies couldn't be changed. She'll have to deal with them in the end. TCH, what an annoying situation that you left me with. Shiro clicked her tongue in annoyance. Out of curiosity, she decided to look at how Kuromi was as a person. To her surprise, the two of them were very similar. Kuromi, while not having the support of the Snowmancer class and her monster title, was just as confident, and their fighting styles were quite similar. Despite being a mage, Kuromi had also placed a huge importance on training the body. Shame. I think we could have been pretty good friends. Shiro smiled softly and stood up. Stretching her body, she walked out of the library and made her way to the supermarket for some drinks. Level up. Oh. Seeing her level increase from 64 to 65, Shiro allocated her stats accordingly and smiled at her progress. Name, Shiro. Race, Mystic Fae. Level, 65. Class, Mystic Sylph Queen, Snowmancer. HP, 2918, 750/2, 918, 750. MP, 7, 693, 750/7, 693, 750. STR, 18,000, plus 300, plus 2, 700. VIT, 17,000, plus 1,000, plus 850. INT, 42,000, plus 2,200, plus 6, 300. AGI, 23,000, plus 1,000, plus 1, 150. DEX, 17,000, plus 300, plus 850. DEF, 8,000, plus 1,500, plus 1, 200. Equals title bonus, 7/7 and 3/7 Kaiser Wyvern set effect, 10% increase to DF, INT, STR, and 5% increase overall. With this, her HP had almost reached the 3 million mark while her MP was almost at the 7 million mark. To think that I have to be level 65 to even approach Yin's MP count from back when she was just level 55. She mused with a soft smile. This just meant that Yin's stats were off the charts due to her race as a phoenix. Only problem now was solving her lazy attitude. However, Ignoring that, she noticed a small problem. I've already outgrown my set armor, she muttered with a slightly bitter smile. Since her Kaiser Wyvern armor was a level 60 piece of set equipment, once she levels up to 66, the effects would be nullified. This meant that she had to find new pieces of equipment that matched her level. But she doubted that she could find armor that had set effects that matched up to the Kaiser Wyvern set. I wonder if Helion can upgrade armor yet. Shiro wondered to herself. High-level blacksmiths could reinforce and upgrade armor so that their level requirement is increased. If he was able to upgrade her armor, then it would be great news for her. If not, she could try find another set. Though I suppose this is a good time to quickly make a trip back to New York. It'll be harder to get a replacement when the conflict starts, she muttered while looking through the drinks aisle. Picking up some drinks that looked quite nice, she walked up to the counter and paid for it. URG. I can't believe some drinks actually cost tens of thousands, she thought to herself since she had found out about the old value of USD. Back then, one would only need roughly $1 to get a drink. For that to be multiplied by several thousands, one could really see the impact the dungeon had inflicted on everyday life. Opening the bottle, Shiro enjoyed the fizzy orange juice and made her way back to the castle. This time, she was going to get some extra info along with martial arts from the Royal Library. She couldn't miss out on this chance now, could she? The information is just laying there ready for her to claim. After all, it would be rude for her not to take a peek. Let's see what I can incorporate into my martial arts. She grinned while staring at the castle. When she arrived back at the castle, she was approached by a maid. Miss Shiro, I'm the personal maid that the elders have assigned to help your group. If you have any inquiries, feel free to ask me. The maid bowed. Any LVL 100 Tempest Queen. She had blonde hair tied up into a ponytail, clear blue eyes, and a modest physique. From her appearance alone, Shiro guessed that she was in her early to late 20s. A very young age to be level 100 considering the standard of average adventurers. Since you said so, is it okay if I ask you to show me the Royal Library? I wish to search for information, Shiro asked with a smile. Of course. Right this way. She nodded. Walking through the corridors, Shiro decided to ask her a few questions. So if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Annie? I'm 26 this year, Annie replied. At 26 years old, and level 100 is quite an achievement, Shiro praised. Haha, it's nothing if I compared myself to you, Miss Shiro. Despite being looking so young, you're already level 60. How old are you? Annie chuckled. Well, I'm not too sure. I did have amnesia before I met Lyrica after all. Shiro shrugged. If Annie saw her true form without the disguise, she would surely be surprised. Plus, it hasn't even been a year since her reincarnation. Constant dungeon runs, quests, and raids that were above her level had massively boosted her strength within this period of time. If one didn't follow her path of constant danger, they would need around 2 to 3 years to get to her level. Some may even be longer since they could struggle with killing monsters or lack the capability to make the best out of their class. Well, one can only stay young for so long. With a few exceptions, of course. Annie smiled. Oh, seems like you know someone. Shiro raised an eyebrow. You could say that. We call her the Immortal Psycha since she looks like a very young teen despite being in her 40s. The Immortal Psycha, huh? She sounds interesting. Shiro smiled with interest. It reminded her of what Helion had told her before. How he had fallen in love with a girl that looked his age but turned out to be a 32-year-old married woman. Lalababa was the word, I think. I saw it on the web, and I think it means an older woman that looks very young. Haha, Psycha will be angry if you call her that. Annie laughed, but realized that she was outstepping her bounds as a maid. I apologize for my misconduct. She quickly bowed. AI, don't worry about it. I prefer people being casual around me. If you're worried about professionalism, just think of it this way. Since the elders granted us VIP treatment, then I request that you act casual around me, or else I'll be uncomfortable and it would no longer be good service. Shiro grinned. If that's what you wish. Annie nodded and relaxed herself a little. Since the elders had told her to respect Shiro as much as she could, she was worried about her performance. Thankfully, it turned out that Shiro was rather relaxed and didn't mind her being casual. So anyways, back to the Lalababa Psycha. How young does she look and what does she do? Shiro asked. She wanted some entertainment after hours of researching about herself. If I had to say, She looked around 13 to 14. Her husband had been pulled away for questioning a few times now. It's almost become a common sight in this city. As for what she does, she's a government worker that focuses on public order. Annie chuckled at the memory of seeing Saika's husband crying out in protest while the new staff that was patrolling the area dragged him away. It had even become a small welcoming party for new patrolmen who hadn't seen or heard about Saika and her husband. Ods. I wonder what causes her to look so young, though. Apparently, it was because of her race. Her father was a dwarf while her mother was a human. Since she's a half-dwarf, she ages a lot slower. Annie replied while placing a finger on her chin. As they continued to discuss about Saika and her husband, Shiro found herself quite eager to meet the woman in question. It wasn't often that one would find someone like her after all. Oh, we're here. Annie gestured to a large set of doors down the corridor. Looking around her, Shiro noticed that the library seemed to be inside the giant tree that the castle surrounds. Looking at the tree, she guessed that it was a world tree but couldn't be sure. Say, Annie, what's with the giant tree? Shiro asked. Oh, that's a juvenile world tree sapling. Unfortunately, it's not been able to grow at all since the essence flame has been lost. If you don't know, the essence flame is a treasure of our race that can heal everything that it touches. It had a special effect with the world tree and helped it grow. But now that it's gone, we can only try to keep the tree alive as best we can. Annie replied with a sad smile. Seems like you treasure the tree quite a bit. Well, the growth of the world tree is a sign of the elven race's prosperity. Ever since we've lost the essence flame, bad things constantly occurred to the elven race. Example being the conflict between the princes. Annie sighed. Hearing her response, Shiro guessed that the elven race sees the tree as a religious icon of sorts. Much like Jesus for humans, the world tree was just as important to the elves. Sorry about the depressing tone. Let me open the library for you. Annie coughed lightly and jogged over to the door. Pulling out an access key of sorts, a magic circle spread out over the door. Watching the door open, Shiro peeked through the gap and saw that it was a rather small library when compared to the public one that she had just visited. I suppose that makes sense since the other library was made so that lots of people could access it. The Royal Library was made up of 3 floors. On the first floor, she could see several consoles where one would search up the information they required. On the second floor, it was marked down as recipes, and the third floor was for martial art manuals. To access floors, one would need an access key, one that wasn't given to Shiro since she was only allowed on the first floor. Say, Annie, who is allowed on the second and third floor? Shiro asked curiously. Only elders and the ruler can access those 2 floors unless they were given permission. It's filled with important documents after all. Normal people like me can never hope to see the contents of the books stored in those levels. Annie shrugged but wasn't too bothered. Suddenly feeling a vibration in her pocket, Annie pulled out her phone and checked her notification. Sorry, Shiro. I need to leave for a moment. I'll just be waiting outside, okay? She apologized. No worries. Shiro replied with a smile. After watching Annie leave, Shiro walked over to the consoles and tried to search up more information regarding her identity. After browsing for a while, she realized something quite surprising. Any information regarding Kuromi had been limited to Japan and the places near Japan. Outside of this, all information about her had either been censored or deleted. It was as if someone was trying to limit the amount of people that knew about Kuromi. Quite strange, Shiro muttered. Noting down the fact that her information had been heavily limited, Shiro tried to find other useful information but came up empty. All she found was notes regarding her actions and ball-crushing habits. She had also found some records of Shiro in the Kuromi's fan site, but was dubbed as someone who was trying to imitate her. Some people on the site was suspicious, but decided to wait for the Asakura family to return from the current Demon Continent excursion before making a decision. Realizing that this was why the Asakura family hadn't made a move regarding her identity, Shiro wondered how long it was going to take. I may have just offended 2 Tier 5 beings by taking over Kuromi's body. Shiro sighed. Shaking her head, she looked up at the second and third floor and narrowed her eyes. I might be able to sneak into the different floors. She mused to herself as a grin crept up on her face. With her knowledge of magic and her skill Rift Walker, this should be a breeze. Snapping her fingers, she activated Fey illusions and made an illusion of herself researching on the terminal. Crouching down slightly, she leapt up and landed on the railing. Their formations are rather sneaky, she thought to herself. Making herself a pair of glasses that specializes in detecting mana, she widened her eyes when she saw the massive formation protecting the entire second and third floor. Screw that. Might not be as easy as I thought. Filled to the brim with tier 4 magic circles, the formation would definitely kill her should she make one wrong move. Sitting down on the railings, she crossed her legs and narrowed her eyes. I need to be careful with what I disable. If I just disable parts at will, it'll result in triggering the alarm system or worse, the attack system. She estimated that she couldn't even test out its defenses since the moment she did, it'll warn the elders. Welp, seems like I have to do this in one go, she muttered. Flexing her fingers, she created several small needles that was enhanced by celestial path. Once she throws it into the formation, she'll be able to cut it off. However, just this wasn't enough. The moment she disables the first formations, she guessed that the inner formations would detect the deactivation and send a signal, notifying the elders of her intrusion. After all, this was the royal library that holds the information to many important documents. It would be foolish to not have additional security. Therefore, she needed something else as a placeholder so that the security won't activate. Narrowing her eyes, an idea appeared in her mind as she grinned. If she was to have the needles seal the formation while outputting the same mana frequency, she may be able to trick the security into thinking that the formation was still in place despite not being active. Making herself a small pen of sorts, she clicked the tip and aimed it towards the formations. Once she had the frequency of the mana, she smiled and stood up on the railings. Adding an additional chamber to the needles so that it would release the same mana frequency as the formation, she took a deep breath and prepared herself. Asterisk few 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 few. Flicking her wrists, she sent the needles forward. Asterisk TZ. Seeing the formation flicker before shutting down, she smiled when she realized that the needles were doing their jobs correctly. But her joy was short-lived since she noticed the mana being drained quickly from the needles. sh*t. Clicking her tongue, she flickered towards the inner area since her needles could only last for so long. On the edge of the first formations, she quickly traced the mana frequency and threw several more needles. TCH. How many security formations are there? She wondered while flipping over a detection box that the formation had set down. If not for her glasses that showed her where everything was, she may have accidentally triggered it without knowing. Controlling her mana so that she stuck to the ceiling, she peeked into the main room on the second floor. She only had a few moments left until her needles expire and the base formations turn back on since the needles were only temporary. 3 tier 4 killing formations along with detection boxes all over the books. Damn, if I didn't know better, I would have thought that this was the royal armory for them to have this much security. She mused. Quickly making some more needles, she threw them at the formations and turned them off for the time being. Roughly 24 seconds left till the first set of needles expire. She frowned and quickly got to work. Dashing into the main room, she quickly scanned all the categories for the books and tried to find something that was worth it for her. Buff, heal, detoxify, poison, full heals. Glancing through the categories, she clicked her tongue after seeing nothing that was helpful for her. But on the last category, she widened her eyes in joy and realized that she had hit the jackpot. Full body repair/rebirth. Yes, she cried out in her mind and dashed towards the shelf. Flicking a needle into the detection box, she disabled it and quickly grabbed the book. However, she knew that she couldn't take it like this. As she was pulling it out, the nanobots were making a replacement book to substitute it for the time being. 8 seconds left, she thought, and quickly dashed out of the second floor. Asterisk Kish. VRRR. Breathing out heavily, she had a smile on her face when she looked at the book in her hands and the fact that none of the formations had triggered a warning. Success. She grinned. Crossing her legs, she opened the book. There was only one recipe recorded in the book, and it detailed how one could find the ingredients. Boreas Rebirth. A pill that will enhance your body with extreme ice. Stated to have come from the god of north wind and winter, once a person takes this pill, almost no fire can melt their ice. Shiro muttered in interest. Not only did this pill reconstruct her body, It will also enhance her ice element. Killing two birds with one stone. I like it. Turning the pages, she looked at the kind of items that she needed and couldn't help but feel that her happiness was short-lived. Boreas Rebirth. Requirements. Underworld Ice Rose, Sub-Zero Spirit Essence, Crystallized Divine Nuclei, Millennium Ice Dragon's Essence, Glacial Lotus Blood, Sacred Frost Jade, Tears of Winter, and Eternal Ice Heart. Holy hell. It would probably be easier if I just stuck with the rebirth pill instead. She muttered bitterly since she recognized some of these materials. The difficulty of acquiring some of these materials was something of a whole new level. Example being the Underworld Ice Rose. To get this special flower, she would need to find a place of extreme cold where anything would freeze by just being near it. Even people at the peak of Tier 4 would find it hard to resist the flower, never mind her who is near the beginning of Tier 3. But that wasn't all. To make the pill, one needed to be a Tier 5 pill emperor as a subclass. Otherwise, one would not have the required experience and skills to even get past the first stage of forming the pill. Seems like I can't brute force my way out of this. She sighed. However, she still decided to record the book into her database since things may change in the future. Once she memorized it, she stretched her body and stood back up. Repeating her actions of invading the second floor, she returned the book back to its original spot. While the recipe might be a bust, at least the martial arts will be worth it. She smiled while looking at the third floor. Flicking her way up to the third floor, she realized that the formations were pretty similar except that there were a few more layers. Naturally, after figuring out what she should do, it was just a matter of using more needles to cancel out the formations. Entering the main room, she quickly scanned through the categories much like what she had done with the medicinal recipes. All of the books were placed in one of two huge crevices on the wall. They were either body-type martial arts or weapon-type martial arts, both of which that Shiro wanted. Ohaya, it's been so many years, and it's the first time that I've seen someone intrude into this place like you have. A feminine voice called out with interest. Who? Shiro instantly went on guard. Who? I forgot. But please remind me, why do you feel so familiar? So warm? The voice inquired. I would love to talk, but if you can't tell, I'm an intruder. Shiro replied with a slightly forced smile. The needles were expiring, and she needed to get out quickly or else the formations would turn back on with her inside. Let me deal with that for you. The voice replied in realization. Suddenly, mana flooded the area and turned off the formations. We should be able to talk now. Indeed. Shiro nodded, but she kept her guard up. Since the voice could control the formations at will, there was a high chance that it was an important member of the royal family. So, can you tell me who you are so that I may be able to understand why you feel so familiar? It asked again. Before Shiro could reply, she heard Nimue speak within her mana realm. My queen, I think I know who the owner is. Hearing Nimue speak, Shiro raised her eyebrows in surprise. You know who she is? Yes. If I'm not wrong, she's one of the most prestigious spirits of our race. Izul, spirit of the great forest. Nimue replied as there was shock evident in her voice. I can't believe one of the most powerful spirits is used as a battery for the elven race. Her voice choked up in sadness and anguish. Staying silent, Shiro allowed Nimue to leave her mana realm and materialize herself. Ohaya, another one that I seem to find familiar. Feel free to tell me who you are as well. It is terribly boring here alone. Izul asked. Lady Izul, I am Nimue, spirit of the lake. I was once your student. Nimue kneeled down and bowed her head in respect. So my name is Izul? Interesting. You say you're my student, but I don't remember. For as long as I remember, I've always been here though. When did I have the chance to gain a student? This was many years ago, Lady Izul. Since your body is being used as a cursed battery, it is only natural that you'll slowly lose yourself. Nimue bit her lip. I see. How strange. I don't think I'm a battery though. If anything, I just feel occasionally tired and sleep. Izul chuckled nonchalantly. Seeing how she was reacting, Nimue felt like her head had been stabbed over and over again. For her mentor to be acting this way, she couldn't even begin to wonder how many years it had been since she was turned into a battery. So that explains why you're familiar. But what about your friend next to you? I know that her current form isn't what she looks like in reality. Could you perhaps reveal yourself? Izul asked. Sure. Undoing her disguise, Shiro revealed her true form. I still don't recognize you. Izul sighed. Lady Izul, that is because who you're seeing right now is the current queen of the spirit race. Hence the familiarity. As for her level, she may be weak right now, but her potential is immeasurable. I can guarantee that she won't bring the spirit race shame. Nimue gestured to Shiro. Hell, well, I don't know much about the spirit race, so good job. Izul chuckled. Lady Izul, where are you right now? If you tell us, we may be able to save you. Nimue asked. I don't know where I am though. It feels like my conscious is overlapping the whole city and my surrounding area is in complete darkness. Asterisk yawn. Amen. I'm feeling sleepy again. Can you come here often? It's rare for me to see anyone familiar. Izul asked. Of course, but coming here is a little troublesome. Shiro shrugged. She didn't mind giving Izul some company since she felt pity for the spirit. Let me deal with that. I can give you permission to unlock the formations to this place like the other people that visit this place. But don't tell them, okay? They don't really like people coming here if they don't permit it. Izul chuckled softly before her voice faded away. Taking a deep breath, Nimue sighed and bowed her head a few times before turning to Shiro. My queen, can we save Lady Izul? I can guarantee that she will be of great use to you. Unlike me, who can just give you passive effects, she'll be able to grant you an elemental affinity should you link up with her. Of course, I was planning to do that the moment I found out that you knew of her. Though we'll have to wait a while since there are a few problems that we need to sort out first before we rescue her. Shiro smiled. Understood, but I hope we can do it soon. Lady Izul doesn't have much time left, I'm afraid. Spirits hardly fall asleep and are active all time round. For her to be constantly sleepy, it means that she's suffering from a severe lack of mana. When a spirit experiences that, they will be forcefully put into hibernation in order to speed up mana recovery. Nimue explained. So, does that mean she's in a constant state of mana deficiency? Shiro frowned slightly. Indeed. Nimue nodded with a bitter expression. Then that's rather troublesome. The sooner we get her out, the better. Shiro furrowed her brows. She guessed that the longer she left Izul alone, the more damage would have accumulated in her body. As much as she would like to help, but Shiro didn't know where she was and what kind of role she played. The biggest possibility was that Izul was in the world tree, but that posed another problem. Elves view the world tree as a religious symbol. If there was anything that went wrong with it, or if the power source was to disappear, chaos would spread. She needed to make sure that she had a replacement power source for Izul so that the barrier can continue to run. I'll keep that in mind. Go back to the Mana realm for now, and we'll think of ways to locate her later. Shiro said as Nimue nodded. Shifting into mist, she returned to Shiro's Mana realm. Shaking her head, Shiro turned to the martial arts manuals on the walls. Her most lacking aspect in terms of martial arts is fist combat. Having one would greatly enhance her power along with synergising with her phantom path since it ignores defense. Checking through the manuals, she found that most of them were good but weren't on the level of paths. If I choose a mediocre martial arts to focus on, it might weaken the effects of what I have currently. My best bet is to find something similar in quality or higher. She thought to herself. Realizing that the quality increased the higher she progressed, she decided to go straight to the top. There was only one manual on the highest layer. Ancient Heart Enlightenment, Red. A martial art that takes the true nature of your heart and projects it as a body cultivation style designated to you. Warning, should one desire battle within their heart, this will only amplify the effects. It may lead to a path of no return. One's mind will be consumed by a heart demons if they are not resolute. Oh, interesting. Shiro narrowed her eyes and memorized the entire manual. Placing it back, she had a look at the books under this layer and saw that they were only of the purple rank. Classifying them as mediocre in her mind, she hopped over to the weapon manuals. Unfortunately, there weren't any manuals of the red grade, and the rest were inferior compared to her Azura sword path. Picking up a few purple graded sword techniques for the party, she memorized them down and left the area. She couldn't stay here for too long after all. Dismissing her illusion, she walked out of the library and saw that Annie was still talking over the phone. Waiting patiently for a while, she decided to go through the Ancient Heart Enlightenment Manual in her mind. The core concept of the Ancient Heart Enlightenment Manual is to act according to how your heart feels. Without disguising your desires and thoughts, one can focus on any task with their entire being. Should one desire to save people the most, this manual would transform itself to help the user save people. Shiro read in her mind. The initial stages of this manual had no need for fighting, but rather to understand oneself. Once they master this stage, hesitation will disappear from their movements and their fighting style will become smoother. At the second stage, a set of martial arts would slowly appear in your movements. The final stage is where the martial arts would have been completed and you would have cultivated an unyielding heart. As she was studying the manual in her mind, Annie finally finished her phone call and saw that Shiro was waiting by the side with her eyes closed. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you had finished." Annie quickly apologized. "Don't worry about it. I was thinking about something anyway." Shiro dismissed it with a smile. Even so, Annie pulled a difficult face. "It's fine. Why don't you make this up to me by showing me to the training rooms?" Shiro suggested. If she knew where the training rooms were, she could get herself a calm location and train the ancient heart enlightenment. "Of course. Follow me." Annie nodded and showed her to the training rooms. Memorizing where she needed to go for the training rooms, Shiro had Annie show her to the bedrooms. When she arrived at the bedroom, she saw the party resting on the beds. Gesturing for Annie to leave, Shiro made sure that the room was secured before stretching her body. "So how was the dungeon runs today?" she asked with a smile. "Painful," Sylvia replied while trying to hold back some tears. She had thought that only Shiro would be a slave driver, but she was wrong. Lysandra was just as intense. "Painful it may be, but your levels have grown." Shiro chuckled softly. Sylvia managed to level up to 61, while Lyrica and Madison both leveled up to 57. As for Chinyu, he had actually leveled up twice and reached level 59. "We've leveled up, but at what cost?" Madison asked. "Our sanity," Sylvia replied. "Surely it couldn't have been that bad, right? Maybe I should join you so that I can supervise." Shiro smiled. Realizing the consequences of having Shiro come with them, Sylvia quickly shook her head. "No need. Speaking of which, have you done what you needed to do?" she asked. "Yes, I have. Though Chinyu, can you step out for a bit? This is some private girl talk." Shiro gestured to the door and smiled. "Heis, I understand." Chinyu sighed and forced his body up from the bed. Watching Chinyu leave the room, Shiro locked the door. "I found out some information about the previous owner of this body. Her name was Asakura Kuromi. She is part of the Asakura clan and her parents are both near the peak of Tier 5. It seems like Kuromi's enemy may be at the peak of Tier 5 as well or higher," Shiro said with a serious face. "Wait, what?" They widened their eyes. "So you're telling me that not only are we against a country right now and two of the biggest factions in the world, but a Tier 5 enemy and potentially two more Tier 5 enemies since you took over their daughter's corpse?" Madison asked with a twitch of her lips. "Yup. Why is it that you can bring in troubles by just finding out information?" Madison sighed. "I don't know. Maybe it's just the world making things fair since I'm powerful." Shiro shrugged with a smile. "I guess so." Madison sighed. "Well, enough about that. I have some good stuff for you lot." Shiro grinned. Printing out the martial art manuals, she handed one to each of them. When Lyrica saw the manuals, she realized that Shiro must have taken them from the Royal Library since she recognized the manual in Madison's hands. "Shiro, what about the security measures?" Lyrica asked. "About that, I was given full access since I made a new friend." Shiro smiled. "What do you mean by that?" "You see, the thing that's powering the barriers and formations around the place is a spirit. She goes by the name of Azul and is the spirit of the Great Forest. Much like what happened to Nimue back in the Osbar Mansion, she's being used as a battery for the elven race." Shiro sighed. I didn't know that a spirit was being used as a battery." Lyrica widened her eyes. From her memories, the only thing pertaining to the power source of the world tree was that it's something that's passed down from the past generation. Unless one was the ruler of the elven race, they weren't permitted to enter the world tree. For them to be using a spirit as the power source was news to Lyrica. "Amen. I can't exactly save her just yet since I don't know where she is. Even if I did, taking her would do more harm than good right now. Not only would it alarm everyone, it would also expose the capital to enemies that are watching in the dark." Shiro shook her head. "Then what are we going to do?" Spirits are made of mana, so I don't think it's good for her to be used as a battery for a long period of time. Madison asked with a frown. Nothing for now. I need to find a replacement power source first. You lot continue your dungeon clears tomorrow and try level up some more. There's not much we can do right now, so just use it to power up. Shiro smiled lightly. What about you? What are you going to do? Lyrica asked. I'm going to make a trip back to New York. I want to see if Helion can upgrade my armor a little since it'll become useless should I level up one more time. Shiro chuckled bitterly. Can't you just get another set of armor? Madison tilted her head. Ho ho, then tell me if you can get another set like this. Unequipping her Kaiser Wyvern set armor, she showed it to the party. Honestly, I'm not even surprised that you have such an absurd piece of armor. Madison sighed tiredly. So yeah, can you see why I said that I want to upgrade it rather than get something new? Shiro smiled. Yup. Shiro, if you're going to upgrade an armor like this, won't you need expensive materials? Lyrica asked. Yes, I do. I have some on me, but there's a small problem. They can only be used on weapon or armor that have reached the red grade and nothing less. Taking out the heavenly runes from her inventory, Shiro passed it over to the party. She had obtained these at the same time she obtained the heavenly constellation, Aurora. Back then, the young light goddess had given these to her in hopes that she would give it to Lysandra. She had already used one of the charges to upgrade her sword, so the last charge was reserved for her armor. That way, when she takes over Lysandra's body, she wouldn't be losing anything. Little did she know, Shiro was able to clear the quest without using these. The moment she cleared the quest, these two were moved into her inventory as additional rewards. Yours is purple grade. 2 grades away from red. I don't think you'll be able to find a blacksmith like that in New York. Lyrica frowned slightly. Well, I had a small plan to help me achieve this. I need to get some materials first though. Shiro shrugged. Upgrading to orange grade could be done with just technique. But red grade was different. Every item of the red grade would have received a name along with a name skill. This was the defining feature of red grade. It wasn't something that could be achieved unless one was a grandmaster blacksmith. I want to help you get some materials from the royal armory, but despite being a royal, I have no power to speak of. Lyrica sighed. She had wanted to help Shiro, but she doubted the elders would be so kind as to give precious materials away to someone they've only seen for a short while. Don't worry about it. Just focus on leveling up so that I won't have to worry as much would be a great help already. Shiro chuckled. Amen. I'll try. Lyrica nodded. Her eyes flared with the determination to try harder in tomorrow's dungeon. Lysandra was the same. Seeing Lyrica so fired up, she couldn't be lazy as her rival now, could she? While the two were getting fired up for tomorrow, Sylvia had decided to fall asleep quickly so that she could recover. There was no point asking either of them to take it easy, so the best that she could do was to just prepare herself as much as she can. Smiling at their rivalry, Shiro pulled out her phone and messaged Helion. It would be bad if she arrived in New York and it turns out that he had moved cities. Shiro, heya, long time no talk. I was just wondering if you were free tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Helion, good timing. I was planning to move cities tomorrow since both me and Aram have upgraded to C class. I can delay it for a day if you're coming tomorrow. Shiro, that's good news then. Congratulations on your class up. Helion, haha, thank you. Shiro, since you've classed up, I was wondering if you learned how to upgrade set equipment yet. Helion, upgrading set equipment? Sure, I can do that. But I'll need materials though. Since I've only just leveled up and got a hidden blacksmithing class, I'm not too familiar with the process yet. Shiro, what materials do you need? Helion, depends on what grade armor you want to upgrade it to. Shiro, can do you red grade. Helion, PFT, red grade? I didn't think you had so much faith in me. Shiro, so can you do it? Helion, seeing that Helion didn't say anything for a long time, Shiro sighed disappointingly. Oh well, red grade isn't something that can be obtained easily after all. However, just as she made peace with the fact that she couldn't get it to red grade, she received another message. Helion, it depends. But if I had to give it a percentage, I'll say that I have a 35% chance of success. Seeing that Helion admitted to being able to upgrade the armor to red grade, despite it having only a 35% chance of success, Shiro was surprised. Shiro, wait, you can. Helion, yeah. However, The biggest problem with this is that if it fails, the armor is entirely scrapped, meaning you wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Shiro, that's an okay trade for me. Do you want to know the details of my armor so that you can tell me what parts you need to upgrade it to red grade? Hellion, of course. Shiro, all right. But before that, why are you telling me this? You know how many factions would go crazy if they found out that you can upgrade armor to the red grade at your level? Hellion, yeah, but think of this as a favor to a friend. I need practice to improve my technique to begin with. It should be me who thanks you since it's not every day that you can run into a purple ranked armor set after all. Shiro, I suppose so. Here is the information regarding my current armor. Sending over the information about her armor, Shiro waited for his response. While she was waiting, she was still wondering about how he was able to do this. What kind of class did he upgrade into for him to be able to achieve a 35% chance of success for upgrading armor? There must be some serious drawbacks unless the class that he got was S-class or above. Shiro thought to herself, if word got out that a newly classed up C-ranked adventurer could have a 35% chance of upgrading armor to the red grade, the world would go crazy. Hellion, after seeing your armor, I would need some seriously good materials to bring it up to red grade. Shiro, what do you need? I'll try to get as many of them as I can. Hellion, what I need are effects rather than the item itself. Since your armor focuses on defense and intelligence, I would need items from monsters that specialize in that area. The higher quality, the better. How much you bring me is up to you, but it can't be more than 10. The next item that I need is a B-class power-up item. If you don't know what they are, they're items that you can use to boost your strength for a certain amount of time. Once you have these two and a bunch of C-class mana stones, I'll be able to upgrade your armor. Though I'll warn you, even if the percentage is 35%, there is still a relatively high chance for you to lose such a good set armor. Are you sure you want to carry this out? Shiro, I'm positive. I'm about to outgrow its level anyways. Rather than waste it, I'd rather try upgrade it. Hellion, fine. Drop by my shop tomorrow in New York. I'll be postponing my trip for a bit. Shiro, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Putting her phone down, Shiro leaned back and smiled. 35%, huh? 35% of what? Lyrica asked after hearing her mutter. A 35% chance of my set armor being upgraded to red grade, which means that there's a 65% chance of failure. Should he fail in upgrading my armor, I'll lose it forever. Shiro replied. You actually found someone that can upgrade your armor. Haha, yup. I have to admit, he's rather talented. Shiro smiled at Lyrica's reaction. I think that's beyond talented now. He's a genius. Lyrica praised. Amen. I'll tell him that when I see him tomorrow. But I'll have to get some high-rank materials first. After all, upgrading to red grade is pretty hard. Shiro shrugged. After chatting for a little while, they decided to head off to bed. Shiro couldn't help but feel like she was forgetting something though. I'll probably remember it tomorrow, she thought before sleeping. Meanwhile, Chinyu was waiting outside the room. When can I go back in and sleep? ####. Waking up the next morning, the first thing that Shiro did was make a mental note of the things that she needed to collect. 10 defense and intelligence-orientated high-grade materials, 1 B-class power-up item, and a bunch of C-class mana stones. I've already got the B-class power-up item covered since Yuan Tian gave me the silver dagger that I haven't used yet. But if I use it for this, it means that I've lost a potential lifeline should I need to face off against a B-class/tier 4 adventurer. She mused while stretching her body. If she gambled with the weapon, it would mean that she'll lose an extra life. However, if she were to succeed in making a red-grade armor, it will most likely scale up with her level much like her swords. But just in case, she wanted to see if she could get another B-class power-up item. Leaving the room, she was shocked to see Chinyu sitting by the door asleep. Oh, that's what I forgot, she thought to herself. Giving him a silent prayer, she made her way to the auction house. Compared to what she saw back in the old continent, the auction house in Muriel was definitely a lot bigger. There were several floors that correspond to how much capital you had. The more money you have, the higher you can go. After all, there's no point showing the best items to those who can't even afford it. Shaking her head, Shiro wondered what layers she would get with the amount of money she had on her. Walking into the auction house, she approached the counter and reported how much capital she had. Once she was led up to the second floor, the counter lady walked back downstairs and left her to her own devices. Well, I suppose she had better things to do than entertain a single guest. Shiro thought to herself with a soft chuckle. Walking over to the consoles, she searched up the items that originated from defense or intelligence-focused monsters. Ironically, she had even found Snow Woman materials, but they were valued in the tens of silver errands. With her capital of only 8 silver errands, they were out of her reach. I wonder if I can use myself as an ingredient. Now, wouldn't that be odd? She thought with a chuckle. You can, my queen. There's an item called the Tears of the Sylph Queen. This tear would increase. That's possible. Shiro raised an eyebrow. Well, you are the mystic Sylph Queen after all. It would be strange if you couldn't use your own tears. True, but that'll have to wait for a bit. Just in case I can't squeeze out tears, I'll buy some high-rank materials. Shiro replied. She didn't know if she could cry on command since it's been so many years since she had last cried. In the end, Shiro bought 8 Banshee's Essence and 2 Dullahan's Plating. The Banshee's Essence was rather cheap considering that they only took 50 bronze errands. On the other hand, Dullahan's Plating cost her a silver errand each. Storing the items in her inventory, Shiro sighed at the fact that she only had 2 silver errands left. With 2 silver errands, there was no way that she could buy a B-class power-up item. I wonder if I can substitute it with the Tier 4 suppression field that I took from Sinew back in Kairosa. It should be equal to the silver dagger since it affects Tier 4 individuals. Shiro thought to herself. Walking out of the auction house with her items prepared, she made her way to the teleport shrine. She decided that if she couldn't use the Tier 4 suppression field as a replacement, she wasn't going to upgrade her armor. After all, the Muriel was full of dangers with so many people at level 100. If she didn't have a backup plan such as the silver dagger, she'll be limited to what she could do. Once she reached the teleport shrine, she picked New York as her target since it was the only place she could select. A blinding light filled her vision as her body was teleported to New York.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.